You have been complaining that life in Kenya under the current administration feels like hell on earth. Take a moment to look across the border. You see, in Uganda, the country's military chief is already predicting bloodshed.
This indiscipline must stop. The security of the country.
You see, the country hasn't even finished digesting the election results, and the man at the helm of the armed forces is already threatening death for political opponents.
It doesn't work like that.
Uganda is once again at the center of intense political attention as a series of controversial statements attributed to the country as Army Chief have heightened tensions between the state and the opposition, raising fears of instability and renewed confrontation. At the heart of the storm is Robert Kyagulanyi, widely known as Bobi Wine, the pop star turned politician who has become the most prominent challenger to President Yoweri Museveni's decades-long rule. In recent days, social media posts and public remarks linked to General Muhoozi Kainerugaba, the Chief of Defense Forces and son of President Museveni, have triggered alarm both within Uganda and beyond its borders. Supporters of the opposition say the language used represents a dangerous escalation, while government figures insist the country remains stable and that no unlawful actions have been sanctioned. What is clear is that Uganda's political temperature is rising and the stakes are high. Bobi Wine rose to prominence not through the traditional political establishment but through music and grassroots activism. His songs, often critical of corruption and inequality, resonated deeply with Uganda's youthful population. When he entered politics, first as a member of parliament and later as the presidential candidate of the National Unity Platform, he quickly became a symbol of generational change. The 2021 presidential election marked a defining moment. President Museveni, in power since 1986, was declared the winner. But Bobi Wine rejected the results, citing widespread irregularities, voter intimidation, and violence against his supporters. Security forces denied systematic abuses, but human rights organizations documented multiple incidents of arrests, detentions, and the use of force during and after the campaign. Since then, Bobi Wine has remained under close scrutiny. His movements are often restricted, rallies blocked, and supporters detained. The government argues these measures are necessary to maintain public order, while opposition figures describe them as deliberate attempts to silence dissent. Into this already charged environment came a new wave of controversy. General Muhoozi Kainerugaba, known for his active and sometimes provocative presence on social media, has in the past made remarks that blur the line between personal opinion and official military policy. In Uganda, where the army has historically played a central role in politics, such statements carry significant weight. In posts that circulated widely online, the general was quoted making threats toward opposition activities and supporters. While some posts were later deleted or clarified, the damage had been done. Opposition leaders and civil society groups interpreted the language as an endorsement of violence, prompting urgent calls for restraint. The Ugandan government moved quickly to respond. Officials emphasized that the army operates under strict constitutional control and that no orders had been issued to target civilians or political opponents. The Ministry of Defense reiterated that the military remains professional and loyal to the Constitution, not to individual political interests. General Muhoozi himself later suggested that his comments had been misunderstood or taken out of context. Supporters of the government argued that social media exaggeration and misinformation were fueling unnecessary panic. But for many Ugandans, reassurance has been difficult to accept. Uganda's history casts a long shadow. Decades of conflict, from the brutal regimes of the 1970s to insurgencies in the north and west, have left deep scars. Stability under President Museveni brought economic growth and regional influence, but critics argue it came at the cost of political pluralism. Today, Uganda's population is one of the youngest in the world. Many young people have known only one president, and frustration over unemployment, rising living costs, and corruption has intensified political divisions. Bobi Wine's appeal lies largely in his ability to articulate these frustrations in simple, emotional terms. For his supporters, the recent controversy confirms long-held fears that the political playing field is not only uneven but dangerous. The National Unity Platform issued statements condemning what it described as reckless and intimidating rhetoric. Party officials warned that such language could embolden rogue actors and undermine the rule of law. They called on regional bodies, including the African Union and the East African Community, to monitor the situation closely. International reactions were measured but concerned. Western diplomats urged calm and respect for democratic principles, while human rights organizations called for independent investigations into any threats against political actors. The United Nations Human Rights Office reiterated that freedom of expression and peaceful political participation are protected under international law and that security forces have a duty to protect all citizens regardless of political affiliation. Within Uganda, public opinion remains divided. State-aligned media emphasized stability and warned against what they described as opposition attempts to provoke unrest. Independent outlets and online platforms, however, reflected widespread anxiety, particularly among urban youth. Markets, transport hubs, and universities buzzed with debate. Was the country witnessing mere political theater or the early signs of something more serious? President Museveni himself addressed the issue indirectly, cautioning against irresponsible speech and emphasizing discipline within the armed forces. Analysts noted that while the president has long relied on the military as a pillar of his rule, he has also sought to maintain a carefully managed image of order and control. Some observers see the controversy as part of a broader succession question. At 80 years old, Museveni has not named a successor, but speculation has increasingly focused on his son. General Muhoozi's rapid rise through the ranks and public visibility have fueled debate about dynastic politics in a country whose constitution once barred such transitions. Supporters of the ruling party dismiss these claims as speculative, arguing that Muhoozi's career reflects merit and service. Critics counter that the overlap of family, military power, and politics is precisely what alarms them. Bobi Wine, for his part, has remained defiant. In public messages, he has called for non-violent resistance and urged his supporters to remain peaceful, even as he accuses the government of intimidation. He has repeatedly said that his struggle is not against individuals, but against what he describes as a system that excludes ordinary Ugandans from meaningful participation. That call for calm has been echoed by religious leaders, cultural institutions, and elders who fear that political violence would reverse decades of hard-won progress. The economic implications are also significant. Uganda has positioned itself as a regional hub for trade and investment, with major infrastructure projects and oil development underway. Political instability could deter investors and strain relations with donors and partners. In neighboring countries, leaders are watching closely. East Africa has seen a mix of democratic openings and authoritarian backsliding in recent years, and Uganda's trajectory carries regional consequences. For now, the streets remain largely calm, but the atmosphere is tense. Security forces maintain a visible presence, and opposition activities are closely monitored. Social media, meanwhile, continues to amplify every statement, rumor, and reaction. The challenge for Uganda is not simply managing a political dispute, but restoring trust. Trust that the military serves the nation, not a faction. Trust that opposition voices can be heard without fear. Trust that the future will be shaped by ballots, not bullets. As this story continues to unfold, many Ugandans are asking difficult questions about the kind of country they want to be. A country defined by stability at any cost, or one willing to risk uncertainty for deeper democratic reform. The answers will not come quickly, but what happens next will shape Uganda's politics for years to come. For Bobi Wine and his supporters, the moment is both perilous and pivotal. For the government, it is a test of restraint and credibility. And for the nation as a whole, it is a reminder that words, especially from those in power, can carry consequences far beyond a screen. This is not yet a civil war nor an inevitable collapse. It is, however, a warning moment, one that demands careful leadership, responsible speech, and a renewed commitment to the rule of law. Uganda stands at a crossroads. The direction it takes will depend not only on its leaders but on the collective choices of its people, and the world is watching.